All right, we're back. Well, I did a lot of the not very fun work on this job off camera. This hub did not get painted. It has some threads that are not very good. So, no, I might have some 1/2-20 thread inserts. Probably do. Since it's got the backup nuts, I'm gonna just be gentle with them when I tighten those, and we'll put the nuts on, and that will be that. I am not going to bore you guys with another video on packing wheel bearings. We'll get to that. I got the good stuff out here. I tell you guys, I love a job like this where you're just up to your elbows, and at least that's clean grease. These are the thrust washers that Allis used, and I'm just gonna put a little smear of grease on them. And then we'll put them on there. There's a Uno. It had a nice A&I sticker here, and I took my favorite little putty knife scraper thing that came in a flat at a farm sale one time. I'll tell you, that stupid little thing is really handy. I have one of those things you give $1 for a flat of miscellaneous junk at a farm sale, and you wind up using some stupid little trinket like that all the time. It's just a great little handy, cheap, don't worry about breaking it. When I was in high school, I knew a guy. He was blind and had been a mechanic, kinda, sorta, when he was young, and I don't remember even what brand, but he had a ratchet that he was very fond of. And he didn't have a lot of money, and when he had something nice, he wanted everybody to know. And his saying about that ratchet was, "That's a high-priced ratchet and it's easy broke." I just thought that was about the most ridiculous statement I'd ever heard at that point in my life. Of course, I've heard some more dillies since then. So, because this hub is in questionable shape and show season is upon us, there will be swap meet areas, and if I can find a good set of 6-bolt hubs, I will purchase them and we will revisit this then. And because of that, and my desire to not have to drive to Marshalltown to get more parts, I managed to get the seal. Hope you guys can see that. I don't know how wide angle my camera is, but managed to get the old seal off the old spindle. If that hub was perfectly good, I would have went and got a new one. And I think that there is a wear sleeve in the hub also that runs in, and replace all that good stuff. Like I say, this is questionable quality. I'd like to replace it, so we took the cheap route for today. Hopefully we get a chance to revisit this, but in all reality, with the amount of hours that I put on tractors, it'll outlast me. Put just a little grease on that. I don't know. I'm not going to shoot too much more here on the bench. I guess there are a couple things I want to show you guys now that I've made another mess. That seems to be just an ongoing deal with this job. You're working with grease and everything's just a mess, constantly. You get that nasty black grease under your fingernails. I went as far as to take my water pick that I do my gums with and try to get that one fingernail is just terrible about getting black stuff in it. Anyway, losing my train of thought here. This is not unusual. There it is. Okay, here's our key. That is a specially hardened key, I am told, that Allis used. And it fits the keyway very, very snug. And we are not going to tap that in there because it's got to be out to go into bushings, which is another thing we need to talk about. They had some paint in the steering arm, and I had to get a file and work that out of there. But our key also fits the steering arm very snug. This is all important. And the steering arm fits the spindle very snug. They got a nice orange paint on there, which I'm turning black with my hands. It'd be nice to have a pizza oven out here so we could cook our steering arm and warm it up a little bit and make it easier to go on there. It's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon right now. For some reason, we're drinking diet beer today, which is never my favorite, but you know, somebody's got to drink it. Anyway, went to town this morning, got groceries, and had a wild hair thought. Ran down to Reasoner to a friend of mine's, talked to Mike. Another Mike. Wow. Is everybody named Mike? Anyway, he has a nice shop and he told me I could use his mill, so maybe we'll get that 450 intake manifold, not intake exhaust combo, but maybe we'll get that modified and we'll actually make some progress on that old 450 one of these days. All right, now the part of this that we need to talk about, I gotta grab a bushing. These are the bushings that go in the knees. Well, not exactly. These bushings go in red knees. And I should probably show you this. Took the new spindle over and checked it in the tractor in the knee. And I thought, wow, that's sloppy. I'm going to have to change those bushings. And I knew I had a couple of these, and I thought, well, that's all right. We got parts. We'll just go ahead and do it. Cuss. But it'll be done. So, first thing I check, and I'm like, holy crap. Well, that's not going to work. Well, turns out, international spindles are a 1/16 of an inch bigger than Allis spindles. Okay, so, well, that's out. Called the farm store, talked to Dale. They do still have some in stock, and he gave me the part number, and I looked it up online, and for an Allis bushing, and that black stuff just everywhere. The Allis bushing is supposed to be 1 5/8 inches, 1/625. Spindle is a 1/64 of an inch less. It's 1 6/10 inches, so you got 15 thousandths clearance. I did not know that, so came out, grabbed my calipers. Sure enough, you know, spindle 1 6/10. The bushing it's like 6/27, so it's got like 2 thousandths wear. I am not going through the headache to change that for 2 thousandths wear. I think we've covered everything we need to here. I'm going to shut you guys off and bring you back when I'll probably put the spindle up in there. Maybe I don't know. We'll get set up over there and continue. All right, so we're over at the tractor. I think you can see that pretty good. So the bushing really doesn't look too badly worn. That's why and they are just a headache to change. They're, I should have showed you that. There's a joint. They're not well, they are one piece, but they're not continuous. There's a joint, and you drive your screwdriver in there and pry that in, and then you can pop them out, and then, of course, the bottom one's fun. But if you put this in here, it's got some slop. Apparently, that's not a big issue. That's the way they made them, I guess. So we're gonna go with it. I brought this little jack stand over here because I am going to just wonder why that has so much of that black grease right there. Good grief. Hate that stuff. It's all over my hands already. Horrible. So we are up in there. Yep, more black grease. This is not quite as nasty, but I tried to clean that cavity out as best I could, but So I think the way to do this is I am going to just leave it basically like this, and then I will pack the bearings and get the hub on here and get the tire back on here, and then I can let it down, and then I'll put the steering arm on, because I have a feeling that's going to require BFH. So I don't know. Mike was talking about a bearing heater that he's got that he said I could use for another project that I hope to live long enough to complete. Anyway, it would be nice for putting that arm on, I'm sure. So I'm gonna turn you off and go pack the bearings, and I don't know, we'll see how far we get. We're drinking diet beer, that can't be a good start. All right, guys, we've managed to get our hub bearings and all that reassembled. Gonna put the wheel and tire back on. I thought we'd talk about this a little bit, because when I took this apart, I took the old cotter pin out and threw it in the scrap, because I have this assortment of double H cotter pins, which are very handy. And I believe this was $9.99 at the local Tyson store. That was some years back. They're probably $12 or $13.99. Still not a big investment for a 100-piece pack. And there's some good sized ones in there. I mean, they've got the whole gamut. I also keep this little tackle box assortment. I have lots of cotter pins, is where I'm going with that. Because one of my big pet peeves in life is working on something like this and finding an old rusty nail. Folks, go to town, spend 10 bucks. Then you don't have to hunt for a rusty nail, so I gotta go get a tetanus shot after I buy a tractor off of you. I've never actually had, my tetanus shot is always up to speed for every other reason under the sun, but it's just one of those things. Okay, so we've got this put back together to this point. We've got to get the wheel and tire on there. I don't know, that's not too exciting. I don't know if I'll film that or not. I'm covered in spider webs, yay. But it's time for another one of Mike's radio rants. We haven't had one of those for a while. And listening to the radio in between trying to film this today, and the DJ actually says, again, and I heard him say it just a couple weeks ago or less, wow, that's a great tune. I haven't heard that one in a long time. You're the DJ. I say that all the time if I hear a song that, you know. But he pushes the button. Theoretically, he can play any song he wants to. Of course, corporate controls that, and they tell him to play Ozzy Osbourne 24/7, 365. Or even worse, Bon Jovi. So, end of Mike's radio rant. The DJ is an idiot. He should, I don't know. Oh, this is going to be interesting. I don't know. Because we have the big jack stand holding the tractor and the little jack stand holding the spindle and hub. And, well, I don't know. I guess I can always edit this out if it kills me or something. I think that probably the better way to do this is to just get that out of there. And then we will. I need to get better at making YouTube videos, and there's several things I need to do. I need to get a disclaimer page like Ross has that, you know, I'm an idiot. This is for entertainment purposes only. This is not, this is, you might get some how-to out of this, but don't count on it. I don't know. I need to shoot something like that someday. Can we be that close? Wow. Well, it seemed like it. You know, had a guy been thinking, he'd had the impact wrench over here ready to rock and roll. But we're just going to screw this in by hand far enough that hopefully it doesn't go away. Which somehow that's actually working. All right. So we've accomplished that. We'll put our nut on here. I want to, because that's a bad one right there. That one's not too bad. And it's not too great either. I think that one's pretty good. There was 2 of these holes, I believe, that were not the good. I think that this is one of them. Of course, you can't see that from the angle you're at. But I will go grab our little yellow impact wrench. And we will be gentle with the bad ones. I believe that is a bad one. thought that one wasn't a bad one. It probably is now. Well, none of them spun, so apparently we're somewhat good to go there. So this is, I don't know, nothing too exciting here. I'll go ahead and finish putting this together. We'll get the jack stand out of there, and then we'll get on with putting the steering arm on. I'll bring you back later. All right, success, folks. Or at least I'm going to declare it a success. I struggled through the process of getting that arm on there, and that would have been pretty tedious, but everything fits up good and tight. Now, we're just gonna hope that we don't ever have to take that back off of there. I can't imagine a reason we would. But I brought you back to show you some of the tools of the trade, so to speak, because there is a snap ring to hold this steering arm on, as if the press fit, you know, I suppose it would be considered a light press fit, since you only need an 8-pound BFH to motivate it on there. And of course, there's our so fine 3/4 drive, 1 3/4 socket to use as a driver to get it the last, I don't know, 1/4 inch. I use some of America's finest red-green tape, or duck, as the case may be. But these, most people call channel locks. My dad always called them water pump pliers. I have them out because that is what you use on that center cap. I left them there to show you that it's, if you ever got to work on the hub on one of these 100 series Allis's, those water pump pliers are your best friend. These are snap ring pliers that probably not everybody knows about, because there's no holes in the snap ring. They must have got cheap in the later years. In the early ones, they had more of an angle cut here, and then your pliers have actually got a hole to accommodate that. But not everybody is aware of these. They're external snap rings with, you know, you don't have any holes, but you put them on there, and then you squeeze them and the ring flies across the room, and then you cuss and go look for it. But with luck, apparently we used that up earlier. I did check, I'm on there far enough for the snap ring to go in, because this would be absolutely futile if you're not down far enough. I think that's what she said. But anyway, which reminds me, I haven't talked to my buddy Todd today. Okay, so there we are. I had 14 hammers around here earlier, so I guess we'll use the red plier hammer. Yay, it popped in. I'll stump for A&I here a little bit, I guess, because they really put pretty nice paint on the parts. I'm pleasantly surprised. I don't know why I should be, but you know, hey, why not? So we'll get our jack stand out of the way. I have a good assortment of jack stands I've picked up at different sales. The biggest pair I built, I've got a few pictures. I should tell that story sometime. Broke a wagon gear on the way to town with a load of corn, and There's a name for that front part of the gear and it escapes me, but anyway, we got it home. I picked the front of the wagon up with the 6080. This is the abridged version of the story. And backed all the way home. It was a mile from here, or just a little more. Thankfully, not much more. And the lucky part was, we had a nice big road ditch to work in. Borrowed an auger off my cousin, who I got along with better at that point in the game. And looks like we're gonna have to get the handyman jack that up, and we'll get our tie rod hooked back up, and then we'll wonder where our toe in is. We'll have to get our buddy Dan over here to help get that toe in set back where it needs to be, but at least the tractor will be ambulatory. Anyway, I drove that tractor in reverse. My Uncle Mark followed us, and the 6080 has a pretty fast reverse, so I'm guessing, 6-7 miles an hour, and he whined about how slow I was going. I said, well, I could have been in medium range and it would have taken all day. And anyway, to fix that wagon, I needed really tall jack stands, so I built that pair, which I think are over in the other building. We'll talk about jack stands another day. I'll get that tied up, no big deal there. We're gonna call it here. Thanks for watching.